welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving headfirst into a really interesting shift in product management. It's all about how artificial intelligence and these no-code tools are changing the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Letting you figure out what really matters before you spend the big bucks, essentially.
Exactly. It's about getting that shortcut to building things people actually, want.
Which sounds obvious, but hasn't always been easy, right?
Not at all. For so long, product management was dominated by writing these massive spec documents and then these long development cycles.
Right. The waterfall approach or variations of it?
Pretty much. And what's so exciting now is this ability to just cut through all that uncertainty, super quickly.
Thanks to AI, you're saying?
Thanks to AI. We're talking about a huge change in the economics of just validating ideas.
Okay, tell me more about that, economics.
Well, think about it. Something that might have cost, say, $5,000 just to test an idea before, a real guessing game.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you might be able to get signal for maybe $50.
Wow, okay. That's dramatic.
It is. Or shrinking, like a 3-month learning cycle trying to figure something out.
Yeah.
Down maybe 3 days.
3 days.
Seriously. It's possible now. And for, a lot of people listening, maybe solo PMs and smaller teams.
Right, who don't have massive resources.
Exactly. This really levels the playing field. You can get significant validation done without needing this huge army of engineers backing you up right from day one.
Okay, let's pause on that economic impact for a second.
Yeah.
Those numbers really grab you. $5 Ks down to $50, 3 months to 3 days.
Yeah.
It really does sound like you said, a whole new ballgame, not just a small improvement.
Precisely. Because AI lets you simulate key parts of an experience. Things that used to absolutely require serious coding effort.
Simulate how?
Well, you can simulate user interactions, you can simulate back-end responses, even content generation.
Right.
Which means you can gather that crucial feedback, see how people actually behave much earlier.
Yeah.
Which leads to, faster pivots, smarter bets, less waste.
And this leads us nicely into this other idea I read about. Moving beyond the classic MVP, the minimum viable product.
Oh, yes.
To something called a minimum assumptions prototype, an MAP.
That's a really key distinction. Glad you brought it up.
So for listeners, what's the core difference? How should we think about MAP versus MVP?
Okay, so the traditional MVP, right? It often involves building a functional, maybe basic, but working version of your product, or at least a core feature.
Right, something tangible people can use.
Yes. But the MAP approach, it's laser-focused. It's about testing one single core question, or maybe a core assumption you have about how the market will react.
So less about building, more about testing a belief.
Exactly. Instead of building, say, a slice of the whole pie, you're just building enough of a tiny taste test to see if people even like the basic flavor. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So give me an example. Instead of building a simple help desk feature.
Right. Instead of coding that up, maybe you use something like GPT-4, that AI language model, to just simulate how customers might interact with a help desk agent. You script out some scenarios, see how the AI handles it, maybe even let a few test users interact with the AI directly.
Interesting. Or you mentioned tools like Replit or v0.dev.
Yeah, tools like v0.dev are fascinating. You can literally just describe a user interface you want.
In text.
In text, or sometimes with sketches. And the AI generates the code, like React code, for an interactive mock-up. It feels real. People can click around.
But there's nothing really behind it.
Very little. Maybe no real back-end logic. Just enough to test the flow, test the interaction. And you mentioned Firebase or Lovable.
Right, for faking the back end.
Exactly. You can use tools like Firebase's Firestore database or even simpler tools to just capture intent. Like someone fills out a form, clicks a notify me button. You just capture that email address or that click. You don't need the whole system built out to know someone's interested.
So the fundamental question with AMAP is what?
It's really, does this core idea solve a real and valuable problem for the people? I think it does. You're not trying to launch anything yet.
You're just trying to prove or disprove that core belief.
Precisely. Validate that fundamental assumption. And that super targeted approach is what saves all the time and money. You focus effort only on the biggest unknowns first.
It's got a filter then. Making sure you're building on solid ground.
The ultimate filter, yeah. Making sure you're building the right foundation, not just rushing to build any old structure.
Okay, this sounds incredibly practical. So if someone's listening right now, they have an idea and they want to start validating it today.
Yeah.
Without writing code, without waiting for developers, What's the tactical playbook? What are the steps?
Okay, I'd break it down into maybe 3 essential stages. Stage 1 is all about de-risking demand.
De-risking demand, meaning?
Meaning finding out quickly and cheaply if anyone actually cares about your core value proposition. Is there genuine interest?
Okay, how do you do that?
You could use AI, like GPT, to quickly draft, say, 5 different ways of explaining the benefit of your product. Different angles, different words.
Right.
Then you test that messaging. Maybe use Typeform for a quick survey sent to your target audience. Or Intercom for in-app messages if you have an existing product. See which message resonates.
What about ads?
Absolutely. Run really small, cheap ad campaigns, Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever your audience is. Test those different value propositions in the ad copy.
And you're looking for a click.
Clicks, yeah. Click-through rates, maybe clicks leading to a simple landing page where they can sign up for more info. It's all about gauging that initial flicker of interest based on the promise.
Okay, makes sense. De-risk demand first. Find out if the core idea resonates. What's stage 2?
Stage 2 is where you fake the experience.
Fake the experience.
Yeah. The goal here is to create something tangible, something interactive that users can actually play with, but again, without building all the tech underneath.
So like those AI-generated mock-ups you mentioned.
Exactly. Tools like v0.dev or Framer AI are great for this. You describe what you want, maybe provide a sketch, and boom, you get a clickable prototype. It feels real enough for testing.
And you mentioned tracking interactions.
Yeah, you can connect a simple backend, maybe using Firebase again, just to track basic things like button clicks, which screens they visit, maybe simple form submissions. No complex coding needed for that initial tracking.
Yeah.
You could even simulate entire workflows using, say, ChatGPT combined with automation tools like Zapier or Make. You string together different tools to mimic the process.
Right, giving people that realistic feel of the solution without actually building the engine. Clever.
Exactly. Gather feedback on the flow and the concept in action.
Okay, de-risk demand, fake the experience. What's the final step? Stage 3.
Stage 3 is simulating fulfillment.
Fulfillment of the promise.
Yeah. This is where you test the actual delivery of the value you promised. Let's say you're thinking about some new kind of personalized recommendation service.
Right.
You wouldn't build the whole AI recommendation engine straight away, right? That's huge.
No, definitely not.
Instead, you could maybe use email as the delivery channel. Get a small group of early testers, use ChatGPT, maybe with some specific instructions, to manually generate personalized suggestions for them.
Manually?
Well, AI-assisted manually. You track the requests and the generated suggestions in something simple, like an Airtable spreadsheet.
Ah, okay. The Wizard of Oz technique? Kinda.
Kind of, yeah, but powered by AI prompts. The point is, you fulfill the requests for this small group.
And what are you learning there?
You're collecting vital data. How often do they actually use the service? What feedback do they give on the recommendations? Are they getting real value? Do they stick around? You learn about usage patterns, churn, quality, before you invest in automating it fully.
This whole validate before you build thing. I mean, the advantages seem pretty clear. It sounds like it could just save mountains of wasted effort.
Oh, the upsides are massive. Think about it. You avoid those really expensive engineering sprints where you build features that, nobody ends up using.
The dreaded zombie features.
Exactly. You steer clear of those costly feature dead ends that just suck up time, money, morale.
Mm-hmm.
And crucially, you're not bottlenecked anymore by designer availability or developer bandwidth for these early tests. You can move much faster.
So you flip the script. It's not build, then validate.
It's validate, then build. And the savings in time and money are significant. Plus, you focus your precious engineering resources only on the things that have already shown some real promise.
It really makes you think differently about the product manager role itself, doesn't it?
Totally.
It sounds like the PM is evolving. Less about writing requirements, documents.
Definitely less about that.
And more about something else. What's your take on how the role is shifting?
I think the role is absolutely undergoing a transformation. In this kind of AI-powered world, the PM becomes, part strategist, definitely. Part orchestrator, connecting these tools and processes, and maybe even part prompt engineer.
Prompt engineer, like talking to the AI.
Yeah, getting good at giving clear instructions to AI tools to get the results you need, whether that's generating value props, creating mock-ups, simulating responses.
Interesting skill.
It is. And you gain this ability to simulate potential outcomes much more easily, generate multiple versions of user stories or job stories to really hone in on customer needs, even co-create initial UI designs with the AI.
So it's more dynamic, more experimental.
Much more so, yeah. It puts the PM much closer to the actual validation process, running these small, fast experiments themselves.
This has been really eye-opening. We've covered a lot of ground on this new way of working. As we start to kind of wrap things up, what are the absolute key takeaways you want listeners to hold on to?
Okay, if I had to boil it down, the core message is the critical importance of building these minimum assumptions prototypes, these MAPs.
Right, the MAPs.
And actively using AI, not just as a gimmick, but to simulate real usage.
Yeah.
How will people actually interact with this thing?
Simulate usage, validate purpose.
Exactly. Validate the fundamental purpose and the value you're offering before you get lost in the weeds thinking about specific features, bells and whistles.
That makes sense. Focus on the core first. Now, speaking of practical tools, you mentioned a few, but one that came up in my research was Firebase Studio.
Ah, yes. Firebase Studio.
For those who haven't heard of it, how does that fit into this picture of rapid prototyping and AI assistance?
Firebase Studio is a really good example of a platform that's kind of built for this new era we're talking about. Its whole aim is to make it much, much easier and faster to prototype, build, and even launch apps, especially apps that use AI.
Okay. And how does it do that?
Well, a key thing is that it integrates Gemini, which is Google's big AI model, directly into the development workflow.
Gemini and Firebase.
Yeah. So you get AI assistants kind of baked in at different stages.
So what can it actually do that helps with this rapid validation stuff?
Okay, so several things. First, you can easily import existing projects or start new ones using templates. They support loads of common languages and frameworks: Go, Java, .NET, Node.js, Python Flask.
Okay, standard stuff.
Yeah, but also front-end like Next.js, React, Angular, Vue.js, and even mobile like Android and Flutter, so broad coverage.
Right.
But the really relevant bit for our discussion is its app prototyping agent.
App prototyping agent powered by Gemini.
Exactly, and this lets you generate entire working web applications currently. It focuses on Next.js apps basically just by describing what you want.
Describing how? Like talking to it?
Pretty much, using natural language prompts or even providing images or sketches.
Whoa.
Yeah, so you can actually prototype and publish a functional web app, potentially without writing any code yourself initially.
That sounds exactly like the MAP concept. Quickly getting something functional to test.
It really aligns with that, yeah. And then crucially, you can seamlessly switch from that prompting mode into a traditional coding environment if you need to refine it or add more complex stuff later.
So it's not just for the no-code part. What if you do need to code?
Even then, inside the coding environment, it offers AI assistance. It can help generate boilerplate code, the repetitive stuff. It can help you debug problems. It can even help write unit tests for your code.
Okay, so AI coding buddy built in.
Sort of, yeah. And the environment itself is based on Code OSS, which is the open source core of VS Code, so it's familiar and customizable. Plus, it integrates tightly with all the other Firebase services like Firestore, authentication, hosting, and Google Cloud stuff too. And importantly, the Firebase local emulator suite, so you can test everything locally before deploying.
So it sounds like a pretty comprehensive environment for both that initial super fast AI prototyping and the more detailed development afterwards.
That's the goal, I think, to support that whole life cycle, from quick idea validation to robust build-out.
That's a really helpful overview. Now, to make this even more concrete, I know the research mentioned some real-world case studies, examples of teams using AI prototyping.
Yes, those were quite revealing.
What were some of the big lessons learned there? Both good and bad, I assume.
Definitely both. They really highlight some key things for anyone starting with AI in their validation process.
Okay, like what?
Well, the first one, it was about an AI assistant feature that, well, it didn't really take off.
Well, okay, why not?
The mistake, and it's a super common one, was that they tested the feature, the cool AI assistant itself, but they hadn't really validated the underlying job or need it was supposed to solve.
So they built the solution before confirming the problem.
Exactly. The big takeaway there is crystal clear. Make absolutely sure there's a real significant problem you're solving before you get dazzled by the AI solution itself.
That's such a critical reminder. just because the tech can do something.
Doesn't mean anyone needs it to do that thing, yeah.
What about the second case study? That sounded more positive.
The second one was interesting. It involved using AI to quickly create variations of a fake landing page to pre-sell a concept.
Fake landing page.
And it worked well because they segmented the approach. They used AI to generate different landing page versions, but each version focused on a different specific job the product could do for the customer.
A different angle or benefit?
Exactly, different core motivations. And then they used the data, which page got the most signups or pre-orders to figure out what truly motivated people to act.
So data-driven understanding of the why.
Precisely. The key insight was focusing on the underlying job that drives behavior, not just generic descriptions or broad demographics. Find the hook.
Makes sense. And the third one. Sounded like a cautionary tale. The feature graveyard.
Yeah, that one's important too. It illustrated that just because AI lets you prototype rapidly doesn't mean you've automatically validated demand.
How so?
The team in that case, they got really good at churning out lots of impressive-looking AI-generated demos and prototypes very fast.
Okay.
But they hadn't done the upfront work. They hadn't done the deep customer research to really understand the core unmet needs first. They were building cool stuff in a vacuum.
So lots of activity, but not necessarily progress towards product market fit.
Exactly. The lesson is crucial. AI is incredibly powerful for exploring potential solutions after you have a solid grasp of the real problem. It's not a shortcut to skip that essential discovery work.
Right. It accelerates exploration, but you need to know what you're exploring first.
You got it. Otherwise, you just build shiny objects faster.
So looking across those who were successful with this AI prototyping approach, were there common patterns? Things they did differently?
Yes, definitely. A few key patterns really stood out. Successful teams tend to focus on prototyping the question they need answered.
Prototyping the question.
Yeah, not immediately jumping to prototype a full product or feature. What's the riskiest assumption we need to test right now? Let's build just enough to test that.
Okay, focus on the core uncertainty.
Right. Second, they prioritize validating through actual user behavior. Clicks, signups, usage time, task completion.
Things people do, not just what they say.
Exactly. They rely less on opinions or surveys asking, would you use this? And more on observing actual interaction.
Makes sense. Actions speak louder.
And third, they are absolutely ruthless about minimizing the time to signal. How fast can we get meaningful data back? They often aim for test cycles under 48 hours.
Wow, under 2 days to get feedback.
That's the goal for many quick tests. Build, deploy minimally, get data, learn, iterate, keep the cycle incredibly tight.
Okay, prototype the question, validate with behavior, minimize time to signal. Got it. What about the flip side? Common mistakes people make when they start using AI for this.
Oh, plenty of those too. One really common one is just treating AI like a novelty, like a shiny new toy. They get excited about using AI, but don't think critically about how it serves as an engine for gathering real actionable signals about user needs or market fit.
So using AI for AI's sake, almost.
Kind of, yeah. Another mistake is focusing too much on the UI polish, getting caught up in making the prototype look beautiful, instead of focusing on whether it actually solves a real problem and delivers some kind of tangible outcome or value for the user, however rough it looks initially. Function over form, early on.
Good point. Don't gold plate the prototype.
Exactly. And finally, there's the trap of confusing cool with useful. It's easy to build something technologically impressive with AI that makes people go, wow.
Yeah.
But that doesn't actually solve their underlying problem any better than their current solution, or isn't something they'd actually pay for or integrate into their lives. Genuine utility has to trump the cool factor.
That's a great point. Utility over novelty.
Yeah.
This has been such a valuable deep dive. Really paints a picture of a significant shift. As we look ahead then, what does this all mean for the future? For the product manager role itself?
Well, looking forward, I think product managers are increasingly going to be judged not just on what they build, but maybe even more on what they don't build.
On what they don't build. How so?
By efficiently validating ideas and killing the ones that don't have legs early on.
Okay.
Showing they avoided wasting precious engineering time and resources. That becomes a key value add.
Efficient use of resources through validation.
Exactly. And the ability to craft effective prompts, like we talked about, that skill becomes really critical for leveraging AI effectively.
Prompt engineering for PMs.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the concept of MAPs, minimum assumptions prototypes, I think that becomes even more central, the default starting point.
Right.
And this combination, no-code tools plus AI, It really empowers PMs to become builders of signals.
Yeah.
They can directly test hypotheses and gather real-world data themselves much more autonomously.
Pillars of signals. I like that.
Yeah. And ultimately, all this puts an even bigger premium on strategic thinking.
How so?
Because the tools handle more of the tactical execution of prototyping, the PM's value shifts even more towards, are we identifying the right problems? Do we truly understand the customer's job to be done? How do we craft real, meaningful differentiation? Those become the million-dollar questions.
So it's definitely a move away from just managing features in Jira or Azure DevOps.
Oh, absolutely. It's a transition, I think, from being maybe a Jira jockey, focused mainly on managing the backlog and tasks, to becoming more of a signal generator, someone focused on uncovering the truth about what customers really need, what drives value, what works, and what doesn't.
AI helps uncover that truth faster.
It empowers that discovery. AI isn't here to replace thoughtful product managers. It's here to augment and empower the ones who are adaptable, strategic, and relentlessly focused on understanding their customers at a deeper level.
That's a really powerful final thought. The shift from focusing purely on output, the features shipped, to focusing on validated outcomes and generating those crucial signals. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today. This was incredibly insightful.
My pleasure. It's an exciting time to be in product, that's for sure.